I'm getting junk at it. Had that time.
Yeah, just looked a few times.
How can that be?
So what are you? So you went was only start. You'll be starting. I'm planning for the best. I'm going to stand here. There's no point. It'll be about
So yes, you just need to click it. We will. I've got a motion in the back.
well, I've just got the map.
Okay.
Thanks, really.
Yeah,
There's nothing.
I've got a wireless one, but then there's no sound to put it on, so yeah.
Someone's bringing them.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. Actually, well, I've got. This is a copy. Yeah, behind the speaker. Yeah, I'm not doing like. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, pointer. Yeah. Click the pointer. Still not clicking through for you. The mouse. I didn't do that before. Yeah. Working now. Still not. Okay. Hello. Good morning, everyone. So I'd like to make a start. Welcome to the Devonshire Institute, Grassington's Town Hall. It's fantastic to see so many people here today to discuss the active travel opportunities in and around the National Park. My name's Elliot Lorimer, and I'm the Director of Park Services at the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority. I'm relatively new to the authority. I started just over 6 months ago. So it's really great to be involved in something at the outset, you know, as we develop the ideas around active travel. So it's really exciting development for the park. So an active travel plan provides the authority, local partner organisations and communities the opportunity to set out our ambition over the next 10 years to improve and create routes for cycling, wheeling, walking and horse riding journeys into and around the park. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have seen our news release earlier this week, launching a public consultation asking people to share ideas and thoughts on active travel opportunities in the park via an online interactive map. You'll be able to find details of that on the website, and I suspect Rob will be sharing more details on that later this morning. So I'd urge you to log on and offer your thoughts and ideas on active travel opportunities. We've got a fantastic range of speakers here lined up this morning to offer you inspiration and information in equal measure. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Rob to provide an introduction on active travel plan.
For that, I'll just do a bit of housekeeping.
Of course.
So welcome everyone. Hi again, Rob Ashford, as Elliot said. Just so you know, the toilets are just through you can go back out through the door here along the corridor. We're not expecting a fire drill today. So the fire exits are the front door, and there's a fire exit to your left out here. And the assembly point is just outside. Got quite a tight schedule today, lots of great speakers. Thank you to everyone for coming. We've got one break, and then lunch will be served at around 1 o'clock in the Jackson room, which is the room at the back there. Great, so that's all the housekeeping. Welcome everybody. So today is about, as Elliot said, outsetting what the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority are doing in terms of an active travel plan. Thank you, Elliot. And we've invited key stakeholders, organisations, community groups, neighbouring national park authorities, all of the parish councils within the national park, and we've invited you here to Grassington today. And what I'm going to talk about is a bit of feedback that I got from the invitations of the active travel plan. So a few people commented there was no information of how to get here actively, and I actually made that. I made it the invitation, so it was so the only option would be to drive, because Grassington really is a location. I could have made this a lot easier and chosen Skipton, a very well connected, our local market town, as the location. But I think in the Yorkshire Dales it is difficult. There is one person here, you know, who has come on their bicycle today, and some people have come on public transport too. Sorry, two now. That's another one. Three. Right, okay, all right. more than I expected. And there's other people that couldn't come here because there wasn't the public transport links and the difficulty of getting here. So this is an iconic market town within the Yorkshire Dales National Park that we want to see be better connected, and this is what this project's all about. And of course, the technology doesn't work straight away, does it? There we go. Where's this all started? So why are we looking at this now? Why are we looking at active travel now? The reason being the Department of Transport authorities and provided some seed funding to look at active travel. What Active Travel England have done very well is the urban environment, you know, work in Greater Manchester, Greater London, other towns and cities like Leeds. And where they think the investment is lacking is in the rural environment, in the rural economy. So what Active Travel England have come to is all English national park authorities and given us £100,000 to look at an active travel plan. As well as the £100,000, what they're doing for us is there's a support package. In recognition, this is something a bit new to us. I'll talk about recreation later in this talk and what we do well about recreation. But in terms of active travel, there's 6 training sessions on everything to do how to develop an active travel plan, and there's a support network there. So this is why we're looking at this now. As I mentioned, we're going through this journey with all other English national parks, the other 10 English national park authorities, which is very interesting from our perspective, because we're all at different levels of active travel, recreation, and we're all very, very different and distinct national park authorities. From my perspective, and some of my colleagues are here today from the North York Moors National Park Authority and the Lake District National Park Authority, it's really useful that we're all going through this journey together. We've got joint training from the Department of Transport, Active Travel Department, and we're all kind of sharing ideas, and I'll talk about the different approaches. So you'll hear about what the Lake District National Park Authority have done in the past and how they're approaching this today, and the Peak District National Park Authority have kindly doing a remote talk on the work that they've done around cycle infrastructure and how they're approaching this. Our approach, so there was a bid process and how we were going to spend the £100,000. So our approach to this was, first and foremost, was the creation of an active travel plan, developing safe and accessible routes for walking, wheeling, cycling, and where suitable, horse riding around the national park. And it's really important that we think about horse riders, and wherever we're creating active travel routes, the effect on those, because the rural environment is one of those locations where horse riders really do stay. So it's very important that we think about those. The other thing that we decided to do, which is a bit different to all of the national park authorities that are doing in this process, was the creation of a new post, basically the post that I'm in. Previously, I was an area ranger at the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority for nearly 8 years in Mallandale and Ribblesdale, and there wasn't a strategic role within the National Park Authority to lead on this. Other national park authorities are getting consultants doing the work to develop the active travel plan and look at those active travel networks. What our vision is that myself and the Access and Recreation team will develop this active travel plan, and it will be embedded within our team that we will develop over a 5 to 10 year programme. The other thing that we've done, and the talk after me is Sarah Bradbury's talk, we commissioned Sustrans to just do an initial data collection exercise, looking at active travel routes and the rationale for active travel. The other thing we're looking at doing is feasibility studies on active travel routes. So we have a lot of old feasibility studies for cycle walking routes, examples being Skipton to Grassington has been looked at in the past. We look due to negotiation with landowners and funding, these haven't happened. So we're looking at updating those and where appropriate, creating new ones. Shovel-ready projects. So it's a term we use. I don't know if anyone else. So that's having some projects ready from a feasibility study, costed and delivered. We're quite lucky at the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority to have a ranger service that has a lot of skills that we can deliver projects, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and the creation of a map with baseline information. So that's kind of the outset of what we're looking to do. How this compares to what a local authority do. So I know some of you are here today are active travel officers or work within a highways department. So I'm just going to go over what local authorities do in terms of local cycling and walking infrastructure plans and how that compares to what we're doing. So local cycling and walking infrastructure plans are part of the government strategy to embed and create better cycling and walking routes around the country. And the Department of Transport's Active Travel England have set out a very good guidance of how local cycling and walking infrastructure plans are done. And all local authorities were doing. The eagle-eyed amongst you might notice this is our local town. This is Skipton's local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and this provides basically a 10-year plan looking at improving cycling and walking routes on a small scale. Normally on a scale of a town or a district. It might be a district within somewhere like Greater Manchester or Skipton. Other examples being Kendal has one, Lancaster has one in on the counties that encompass the national park and neighbouring counties. So the way that we're approaching this is, I'm going to use the acronym that's used for this, the LC-WIP. We're approaching it from the LC-WIP strategic outlines from the Department of Transport, but there's a bit different, and that's what I'm going to explain in this presentation a little bit here. The similarities are, as I said, we're using that same guideline. We're trying to improve cycling and walking opportunities within the national park, wheeling and horse riding. This is just taken from the LC-WIP guidance. So this is just these are the similarities. It doesn't mention wheeling and horse riding, but that's where I'll come into where the differences are. Looking at a strategic plan of improving infrastructure for future investment, creation of a steering group, data collection, so gathering evidence to make sure that to ensure that you can get funding from places like Active Travel England to create that network planning, prioritising network, and then integrating and applying this. That is, we're doing a similar process as an LC whip would do. Where we differ in the active travel plan from an LC whip, local cycling and water infrastructure plan, is in the LC whip guidance, it mentions wheeling. I think wheeling, when I talk about wheeling, this is mobility access, that will be embedded within our active travel plan. Everything that we do will be ensuring that routes are part of that, and horse riding in the rural environment. It's really important that we're thinking about that. And yes, it is covered within active travel. Geographical area of an LC whip is normally a town, a district, Skipton, Kendal, like I said. What we're looking at, a geographical area, is the entire national park, so nearly 2,200 square kilometres. To give a kind of guidance, the area of Greater Manchester is nearly 1,300 and Greater London's 1,600 square kilometres. So we're talking about a large geographical area, obviously very different environment. But what we're talking about later will be focusing on 4 areas most likely due to Sustrans data that they've provided with us. The distances will be for an LC whip. The guidance is normally 2 kilometres for walking. We're thinking of longer than 2 kilometres because most people that come to the National Park Authority are coming for a walk. So in our 2022 visitor survey, 61% of people came for a walk over an hour and more. So that journey is part of that day. And the same for cycling. Cycling 10-kilometre distance, we'd probably be looking at more than 10 kilometres. Within an LC whip, the lead organisation is normally the local authority. Our approach is a collaborative approach, so local authorities, national park authorities and key stakeholders. LC whips normally focus on urban design, not always, there might be rural, suburban, whereas predominantly what we're looking at is rural design with links into settlements and villages and key settlements like Skipton, Sedbergh, etc. in the national park. And an LC whip focused on highways engineering design. We're in a protected landscape. It's a very different outlook on how we're engineering routes, and we don't always. I'll talk about later. Well, Matt Neal will talk about later is the Garsdale to Hawes route that we're trying to develop and the difficulties and the challenges of that. Not all national park authorities are doing what we're doing, so I'll go back to what other national park authorities. The New Forest have finished they've gone for an LC whip, local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and this is because they were doing this already. So Hampshire County Council and New Forest District Council were doing this, and that's to do with how different that national park is. It's significantly smaller. There's bigger settlements there, and that's a 180-page document that they've produced, high-level mapping, very much based on what a local authority would do. Everything, I thought I'd just mention this. So everything we do as a national park authority, for those that you don't, I know a lot of you work in the protected landscapes and work with protected landscapes, but everything that we do is embedded with our national park purposes. So our first purpose being to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, wildlife and cultural heritage of the national park. And our second purpose, to promote opportunities for the understanding, enjoyment and special qualities. So very much this active travel plan is our second purpose. And the Sanford principle states if there is any conflict, it's always about the first purpose, to conserve and enhance. And in doing so, in any of this work, is to foster economic and social well-being of local communities. So this very much fits in with our second and third purpose. And in some ways you could argue our first, because if you're creating routes in protected landscapes, keeping people on tracks, a lot of the work that we do in the Yorkshire Three Peaks, where there has been erosion in the past, if you're creating a route and keeping them on it, you're protecting that delicate landscape. So this very much hits all of our purposes. What we do very well is recreation. And it's how we apply the knowledge that we have within the National Park Authority to the active travel plan. So the top there, that's the Swale Trail. That's a family friendly, some family friendly because it's steep in places. Bridleway route in Swaledale. That handsome chap there was when I was that's an area ranger in Malham. It shouldn't be me on that picture, it should be Rachel, who does a lot of work for Access for All. I was just the area ranger. And that was about removing barriers around Malham and making that more accessible. And as I said, the Yorkshire Free Peaks, that's a route that we manage in-house on behalf of North Yorkshire Council. And as I say, we manage the rights of way network to a high standard, and we invest a lot of money into this. And it's how the approach for active travel can be embedded within the National Park Authority. So these are just some newspaper clippings from work that we've done. Bridge builds. This is predominantly the Ranger Service and the Access and Recreation team. Improving access routes on our sites. This is the coast to coast, the bottom left there. A current job where we're engineering stone flagging a route on White Mossy Hill through the national park. And finally, this kind of segues nicely into what Sustrans have done for us. I won't go into this too much detail. You'll see within the packs that you've got, you'll have a printout of the corridor identification active travel planning, just a map of that. And this was a high level mapping exercise, data driven. So this was data from ourselves, Sustrans data. So this was car park data, traffic data, and looking at where opportunities for active travel within the national park. And it's provided 4 corridors, which Sarah will talk about in a moment. And this will be supplemented with a public consultation and a bit of network planning, which I'll talk about in my final presentation. And I will hand over to Sarah now to talk more about this, unless I did say there wasn't any questions, but because it's quite quick fire, but I don't mind doing 3 questions and then moving on if there is any really urgent questions that you have, and then we'll do some more at interval.
I remember the local access.
Yeah.
It strikes me a lot of good work is being done here, and I'm really happy about that. But one of my concerns is that very much people who use wheelchairs. And people who use wheelchairs are a very small minority of the disabled people population.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think we need to take that more into consideration. So your survey showed that most people come to the park for a walk of an hour. That would rule out me, for example. I have multiple sclerosis. I can't walk for an hour. Certainly not on even ground. It would rule out a lot of elderly people I know who would not be able to walk for 2 hours.
That was just a survey, you know.
You find often that you're focusing on walks of 2 kilometers more.
And I was saying that we would go beyond that. That's the recommendation from the Department of Transport when you're planning active travel routes, but we would look at longer lengths and below.
Suggesting that's really taken into consideration.
Yeah.
The shorter walk.
Yeah.
The way that we kind of appeal to people who like the wild without style, quite
Yeah.
accessible. So it's just this emphasis seems to be very much on very highly visible disabilities. And I think we need to always keep in mind to keep open the idea of chronic illness and the elderly people that need it. And also another part of our mission is to widen access and encourage access for people of colour, for women, for other underrepresented groups. So I hope you'll talk about that.
So within the access and recreation and the learning engagement team, there's lots of strands. So there is a team, within my team, we're working on improving access. So Rachel Briggs, who works here, that's, there's a lot of work. So we're currently engineering a 3-kilometre route from Aysgarth Falls for access. This is very much active travel. So we're kind of, we have to think of the guidelines from what Active Travel England are talking about and how we can embed those within the active travel plan. So we are looking at wheeling, and it's really important that we're looking at mobility and access. And that we're very much at the start at the moment. and I'll talk about public consultation a bit later on. And it's looking at where we can do those appropriately within the national park and make those available to people.
Final quick point, horse riding, great idea, but is there going to actually be a designated bridle path, because otherwise we mark up the path, we mark up the path for everybody else, but we'll do two problems.
I think what we need to make sure is everything that we're doing is for shared use. That everything, and that's why I was making that distinction between what a local authority might do and what we're doing. And also, we've also got to think about other recreational users within the national park. So there's motorbikes, there's off-road routes as well. And if we're using that network, we need to ensure that we're consulting with all of those people and thinking about that shared use, which is difficult. And that's why we've gone above and beyond the stakeholder engagement, that we've gone to a large cross-section of interested parties at this point, at the starting point. So we ensure all those views are embedded within the policy. Should we move on? Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention is we are recording this. Sorry. If anyone has an issue with recording, please say or let me know. I'll just have to stop.
Oh, thank you. Do I need this? I can just press it.
That's why it works on your computer.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Bradbury. I'm a Network Development Manager at Sustrans and I cover North and West Yorkshire, because that's the region. Some of you know me already and are familiar with Sustrans, others might know, so I'll just give a quick explanation. We are a national charity and we make it easier for people to walk, wheel and cycle. It did used to be easier to walk and cycle, but in recent times we've introduced wheel. We're doing a lot of work around accessibility, as Rob mentioned. And we're known as the custodian of the National Cycle Network. So we've developed the National Cycle Network in partnership with local authorities over the years, but our work's not done. So my job is to look at aspirational routes. Are there new routes that we want to develop? Working with partners, local authorities, Canal and River Trust, national parks. We look at the current National Cycle Network, where it goes. Could it be realigned to be safer and improved? Existing National Cycle Network to see if it needs, upgrading and improvements, particularly around accessibility. So I'm going to be talking about the data collection that we did for the National Park for the initial data collection to inform their active travel plan. Okay. So the project took place this summer, over June to August, and included a site visit. Two of my colleagues, Dan and Jim, came to the park for 5 days, and the outputs were a briefing note with some SWOT analysis, which I'll show in a little while, and identifying corridors which we think need further investigation and routes that could be developed. And then we've developed a map which has mapping on it and provides photos and a lot more information, and hopefully I'll be able to bring that up and show you in a few minutes. So what did we start with? As Rob said, we have data from the National Park itself, such as visitor numbers, car park usage and numbers of vehicles. We also mapped population centres, attractions, visitor centres. We looked at existing transport links like rail stations, bus routes and cycle hire points. And we also looked at existing NCN, sorry, that's National Cycle Network, and other cycling and walking routes such as public rights of way. And then this was all mapped, as you can see here. This is a screenshot of the actual map that was produced. And that enabled us to identify 4 key corridors, which we recommend the park focuses on for its active travel plan. 3 of those were prioritised for the 5-day site visit. So this is the image that I think you've got a printout of in your bag that you picked up. So the 4 key areas were the southeast of the park, the 3 peaks, Wensleydale Corridor and Swaledale. Out of those, the 3 that were seen as the top priorities were southeast, 3 peaks and Wensleydale, and those were the ones that were looked at over the 5-day site visit. So here's my colleague Jim. So over 5 days, 2 colleagues covered 267 kilometres on their bikes, covering 19 routes in the national park. I should say, Dan, my colleague, you know, he races, he spends his weekends doing this kind of thing. Jim, not so much. And the thing that allowed Jim to be able to cover such a big distance was this e-bike. And I think that's something that's going to be quite important for accessing the national park. Not everybody can cycle the whole way through the park. And on the site visits, they prioritised routes that we didn't know so well. So, you know, we know the existing National Cycle Network. We don't know public rights of way. There's paths that you can't see on Google Street View. So those were the ones that were prioritised. They took thousands of photos, which have all been recorded. And what they were looking at is, how do you make the journey now to between these 2 destinations, and how could that journey be improved? So we've got an existing alignment, and what would the better alignment be in the future? And as Rob mentioned, the current guidance from Department of Transport, Active Travel England, it's known as LTM 120, it does apply more to an urban setting. But at the moment, that is what we're working with. That's what, you know, if you're going to get funding, that's what you've got to meet, those criteria. But we are waiting on rural design guidance, which is hopefully going to be released next year from DFT, and that might change things. So things like, at the moment, widths that you expect to get in an urban area may not be as achievable in a rural area. So things like that might change some of this. Here's some of the SWOT analysis that we did, just an example of just one route that was looked at. So you've got the existing route and then the aspirational route and how that can be improved. And then the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats for each one. The gradient profile that you can see at the bottom. And then, I don't know if you can see on there, there's some scorings. So for the existing route, the high level gradient was scored as 2. And for the new route, it was 1 being score. And then we've just done some high level costings. What would it take to get this up to standard? So for the existing route, 2, but for the red route, although it would be a preferred route, it would be more expensive, but scored 3. So but for each route that was looked at, the National Park now have this analysis. Here's a few of the photos I thought were the nicest ones from the site visit. So you can see it covers some beautiful landscapes, but not necessarily that accessible for everybody. We've got, you know, bumpy surfaces, see a bit of a gradient, paths narrow in places. So these are all things to take into consideration. And the obligatory nice green bad stop. So all the data was mapped. There is a picture of it here, but I'm hoping if I can change windows, we'll see what happens. I can actually show you the map that was produced. You do this. Oh, there we go. Right, okay. So this lets you switch on and off all the data that was collected. She says if it works. For us in here, I think my Wi-Fi is not great. It's doing it. So, for example, we can bring up the corridors, and here you go, there's the routes in each corridor. You can zoom in to examine each one. And then there's things like the photos attached. So I say we took thousands of photos. If you want to see a photo of this location, you can click on it, and if I can move the box, you can click on it. Oh, it's not loading a photo. There we go. And then it will show you the photo in that location. So you have an idea of what it's like now. But these days there's all sorts of data sets overlaid with that, and that's been provided to the National Park. And I just want to provide some of this great feedback that Rob provided for us, which that the finished product has given us the best possible start in creating an active travel plan, and that Sustrans was highly recommended as a contractor to deliver similar projects. So I think the next steps, as Rob says, is going to be some consultation. We've got the recommended routes to consult on, and then for the park to prioritise which of those get taken forward for future development. Do you have anything else to add?
Just from our perspective, that is very true. As you can see, that the GIS mapping system that we've been provided has given us a really good basis, which kind of then links into our public consultation. And you've all got a picture of that map. What we're not saying that those are going to be the routes that we're looking at, but it gives us a good indication of where we're going to go with the active travel plan. And how, as Elliot mentioned earlier, there's and I'll mention it again, there's a public consultation. It'll be interesting to see where people want to go with that, and that will be a part of our evidence for the active travel plan. And then any of you, there's a QR code as well, which I'll talk about later within your packs, which you can link to the public consultation. So yeah, and thank you, Sarah and Sustrans. Anyone have any questions? There's two questions. Go on, yeah. That will be a lot of what I will be doing, and ensuring that we're working with the three constituents, local authorities, Westland, Westland and Furness, North Yorkshire and Lancashire County Council. Yeah, so that and there's other things happening as well. So there's some people from Skipton Town Council, and they're looking at their offer theirs, and links into. So today is the start of that, working with key stakeholders, ensuring that we're looking at what LC whips are there, what other plans are there, and how we shape that into what we're looking at. So there's going to be an ongoing dialogue between ourselves and the.
Just to introduce myself to people who don't know me, I'm Andy Ryland. I wear a variety of hats. I'm the bike shop in the village, local resident, and also work part-time for Community First Yorkshire, where we do a lot of work with local community groups and all sorts of things on that. Part of that, of my question comes about the local communities and local travel and local active travel on that. And what cycling this morning, there was a family or mum with two small children cycling along, trying to make their way to Freshfield Primary School along the road. And I think there's an awful lot of small routes.
Can we hold that thought to the end, Andy? So that is in my last. Is that okay?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I just want that.
And that's really
community getting this, because it just feels a little bit that this is just about.
It's not. The answer to the question is it's not. It's about the small and the large. It's about the big schemes. It's about just creating a crossing. It's about a link from Freshfield School, through along that road, so people have that opportunity. But I will talk about that at the end in the public consultation, if that's okay. I'm just going to swiftly move on to the next presentation, if that's okay. So I'd like to introduce Colin McCann, who's from a community group that are looking at a greenway in Wharfdale, which will link in, hopefully, to the national park.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Rob, for the introduction. As Rob said, I'm Colin McCann. I'm the chair of Friends of Wharfdale Greenway, and I'm here today. I'm going to give you an overview of what the Wharfdale Greenway is about and a bit of work of what the Friends group do. So the Wharfdale Greenway, then, to give you an overview of the project, the longer term aspiration is a route from Wetherby to Bolton Abbey, Bolton Bridge, which is basically the gateway to Yorkshire Dales National Park. The section that the current governance and Friends group are focusing on is from Poole through to Bolton Abbey, Bolton Bridge, with various levels of work going on different sections. The sections being kind of broken up between each settlement, basically. And the bit there between Otley and Burley is in solid because until last year it had planning permission both from Leeds and Bradford Council. We're now reviewing what we do with the Leeds planning permission that's expired and how we move that forward. So the route in total in red is about 14 miles in its entirety when developed. And you know the aspiration for this route has been around for about 20 years, with various people working on it. And as I say, the grey bit back to Wetherby is part of Leeds City Cycling Strategy, which you'll see in a minute. And I'm not aware that anyone is actively working on that. So the route then is a bit of a fun slide. Apologies, it doesn't go all the way up to the edge of the national park, but yeah. So basically, as you may know, Lower Wharfdale is very busy, very congested. Several big A roads with lots of traffic going in and out of the major cities, Leeds, Bradford, etc. And it's also the gateway from those cities through to the national park. So, you know, the Wharfdale Greenway would provide an alternative to those busy roads. It would also connect to transport hubs and train stations along the way. You know, we've got 3 large secondary schools, as indicated, Ilkley, Otley and Minston. You know, we've got shopping facilities all the way along the village. We've got sports facilities all the way, you know, through the valley. And we've also got a proposed BMX park in Burley and Wharfdale. So wouldn't it be fabulous if kids could take their BMXs, ride along the Greenway, go and have fun in the BMX park, as and when that's developed. That's a separate group looking at that. And, you know, more importantly to this audience, it would connect the suburbs of North Leeds to the edge of Yorkshire Dales National Park, providing that gateway and an active travel corridor. So, as I said, so this is the Leeds City Cycling Strategy map, and it shows the bit highlighted in red is the bit we're focusing on, the Wharfdale Greenway, with the longer term aspiration, as I say, connecting over to Wetherby, which would be fantastic, because then it leads to other greenways in that part of Yorkshire. So the Wharfdale Greenway history then, but I'm also aware that there's 2 people in the room that have been working on this a lot longer than I have. So no heckling, Emma and Vicky, please, but I welcome positive interactions. As far as we're aware, and again, I was talking to somebody last night in the pub who was involved in the original proposals of the Greenway, which came about early 2000s. Sustrans, probably not Sarah, but maybe some of her predecessors, proposed a route from Addingham to Bolton Abbey, and I think it also came back to Ilkley. That proposal that brought a lot of strong objections, mainly from the Addingham, partly from the Addingham Parish Council, some of the community, and landowners, and that is still talked about today because it was in the pub I was in last night was in Addingham, and there was a reason for that. So then in 2009, the first feasibility study was done by Sustrans. That was a commissioned piece of work. Then there was a public consultation, not by the Friends group, done in 2015, which showed a high levels of support for the Wharfdale Greenway. And then there are various other feasibility studies done since then with various landowner discussions and route feasibilities, designs, etc. ongoing, mainly for different parts of the proposed Greenway route. So the Greenway governance then, the route, the project as such is owned by a steering committee. That steering committee is made up by representatives from the parish and town councils along the route, with Addingham probably being the last to join a few years ago. And again, part of that is the legacy of those previous objections. And there's also representatives from Leeds, Bradford, Wyca who are in the room, and Sustrans, which is Sarah at the minute. So that steering committee have commissioned a lot of that design work, feasibility work, via Sustrans and other consultants. And the Friends group, we've been attending since last year, and earlier this year, the steering committee decided to set up a working group primarily to focus on section 1, which is the Otley to Burley bit, and that is chaired by myself as chair of the Friends group. So a bit about the Friends group, what we do. We were set up 3.5 years ago as a local volunteer group. We're a small pool of volunteers, and really one of the reasons why we came about was our founder and former chair Anthony Butcher realised that there was no information in the public forum about the Wharfdale Greenway. You know, basically there was a pool of people in the steering committee working away on the concept, but there was nothing in the public domain. There was a very old website that wasn't updated. I think it may have been by a previous support group that it ceased to be. So the Friends group, what we do is we aim to work with the steering committee. We're the public voice, if you like. We do a lot of promotion and just really to help develop the Wharfdale Greenway where we can. So the promotion tools we use, we've built a website a couple of years ago. We've now redesigned that. I've got cards at the back with our address and details on it. We attend regular events. I think we've done 3 seasons now of spring and summer events, talking to people, just promoting the word. The question we're now getting after 3 seasons is, have you got any news for me, or when's it going to happen? And of course, my answer is, how long's a piece of string? So really, we've built up that 1.1k of names on our mailing list through talking to people. There's a gentleman in the room who's submitted his name via our website. So, you know, and that goes forward to the mailing list. We do regular newsletters once we've got something to shout about or promote. We've got a large following on social media, mainly via Facebook, but with a smaller following on other channels. And we've done this time last year we did an online survey, which was really to document all of those conversations really that we get at events. When's it going to happen? You know, what have we done now? So we wanted to document that support and create a body of evidence that can be used for business cases and funding bids, etc. And really just, you know, an evidence base for the project. Obviously, we engage stakeholders. I think I had a call with Rob about a month or 6 weeks ago, and he was telling me about this conference. So that's partly why I'm here today. Events then, the one on the left is one of my favourite events still. This is last year where this is a pub in Addingham, no room in the inn, as we say, where we actually filled the room with people talking about the Greenway and you know, our supporters, what can happen. And this was really, this was just before the elections in Addingham Council last year. And as I say, there's a bit of a history in Addingham of lack of support, should we say. So we wanted to send a strong message to the Addingham community and to the politicians saying, look, the Wharfdale Greenway is really become a talking point. Public events, the other picture there, that was our most recent event, Ilkley Car Free Day in the Grove in Ilkley. It's actually, you can see we've got a load of people coming up and finding out about the Greenway. It's amazing how many people still haven't heard about it, despite all of our work, which suggests there's a lot more to do. So I mentioned the survey then. I just want to outline the results we got back from that survey. So when we launched the survey, we kind of expected we would get 500 or 600 people fill it in. You know, it was a 10-minute survey, so it wasn't insignificant in terms of people's time. We were amazed we got 1,700 people over a 10-week period. And as you can see there, the support reflects the previous survey, the 2015 survey, 95% support, with 87% strongly support. There are a small number of objections, mainly came from landowners. Some people didn't want to disturb nature, and there was also concerns about user conflict, which I'll go into a little more in a minute. We promoted the survey mainly via social media. Some parish councils picked it up and put it in their newsletters, and with various other channels. So as I say, it was a fantastic response. Of the settlements up and down the proposed route, we got an average of 3%, with I think the highest response has been Addingham and Burley and Wharfdale, which was 3.5%. And again, that was just because it was picked up locally and promoted. So interestingly, even though the long-term project goes to Bolton Bridge, that's probably the least bit of work. That's the section with the least amount of work on it, and we don't have a strong representation in the hamlet of Bolton Abbey. So that's why it wasn't actively promoted there, and there's also a very small I think there's one person from Bolton Abbey filled it in. So what we did then with those survey results is Ronan, our volunteer on the left, wrote a very comprehensive report. We've got some copies at the back, just next to my banners, if you want to take away a copy. We then did a launch event with that, and this is kind of the photo shoot before that. Next to Ronan, the guy in the brown jumper, is Richard Hughes. That's the chair of Otley Council and the chair of the steering committee. Mike Babbitt, one of Sarah's colleagues, regional head in Sustrans, if I got that job title right. Some of you may recognise Robbie Moore, and then next to Robbie Moore is Anna Dixon, who was at that time standing to be the MP for Shipley constituency, which includes Burley and Wharfdale. Anna was successful in her campaign and is now the MP, as I say. It's quite interesting to watch the two of them kind of standing next to each other, and it's like, oh, can we do this? You know, that kind of thing. The taller chap next to Anna is Alex Ross Shaw, who's head of transport at Bradford Council, if I got that right, Emma. And myself and Neil, one of our other volunteers, are website builder and secretary, among other jobs. So the survey then was a series of questions about how you would use the Greenway, where you come from, where would you travel to, that kind of thing. So you can see there, walking and cycling to towns feature very heavily. Opportunities for increased fitness, recreation. You know, some people mentioned, could we create a space for a park run? If the route was developed in a whole, 14 miles, we could have a half marathon along the lower Wharfdale and on a traffic-free route, which would be fantastic. Equestrian, as you can see, I know it's been mentioned this morning, didn't feature heavily, but there was also some negativity about equestrianism, which I'll come to in a minute. So as you can see there, there's a huge latent demand for active travel in the valley based on our 1,700 people that filled in the survey. There's kind of over a minimum of 100 people using it daily, with much higher percentages of users using different sections. Obviously, the sections from Otley through to Ilkley are the busiest, reflecting the higher populations and potential recreation and commuter use. So we had a free section, a free text section at the back of the survey then, just for people to document, express their concerns, any support, questions, etc. So at the top then, the route west of Ilkley is the Ilkley to Addingham route, and people had concerns because the disused railway line there has disappeared. How we would identify a route along that section. Some of the responses were a little interesting. For example, surface type. A lot, cyclists, people who are wheeling, using prams, etc., wanted a bound surface, perhaps tarmac. Other people didn't want tarmac because it's less, it's more disruptive, takes away the countryside feel of the route. So that there was mixed opinions there. Again, with lighting, obviously that extends the use of the route and the perception of safety. But again, some people didn't want it. Some people were concerned about litter, but really that's not unique to greenways. And then really, funding was another, just to skip down a bit, funding was another double-edged sword. It's like, well, is that going to be a draw on the local councils? How would it be funded? And also, the amount of money it will cost. Is there available money to make it happen? And when's it going to happen? And which is also reflected on the timescale. As I say, the regular question we get is when, rather than how. And then, as I mentioned at the bottom, the question of user conflict. About cyclists going too fast, potential conflict with walkers, wheelers, dog walkers, and also people had concerns about horses using the same route, which has already been discussed in the room. So, as I said, I've got a few copies of the survey report at the back of the room. It's available on our website, and there's also a useful little Google Analytics tool on the website that allows you to dive in and sort of see what the responses are from each settlement and where people came from. So I encourage you to have a look at that. So key challenges then on the Wharfdale Greenway. What's stopping it from happening, basically. No surprise, funding is a key one, and that's both for enabling work, further feasibilities, and getting it ready for doing a business case, and obviously development work when we get there, and availability of funding to do that. Road crossings is an issue, as it says at the bottom. The section 1, as we refer to it, Otley to Burley, has the highest potential for commuter use, connecting people from Otley to train stations at Menston or Burley. But it's also the most expensive. The top picture is the Bradford Road towards Menston, and that's where the railway bridge used to be. And then the bottom picture is the S65 between Menston and Burley. And again, sadly, that bridge is no longer there, as you may know. So we need to find a replacement. And then there's also a smaller road near Burley that needs a bridge on it if the route is to be suitable for access for all. Landowner objections has already been mentioned in the room. It's a recurring theme on each of the sections of our route. Some sections have more objections than others. We've got active discussions going on with a key landowner on section 1 between Otley and Burley. And obviously they need resolve before we can kind of move forward to a formal business case. And then, as I say, we need to take into account all of the feedback we've got from how we manage competing uses, user conflict, etc., which has been done relatively successfully on other routes. So the Friends contribution then, we're not going to. It's not our role to knock down the disused railway lines, as the picture shows there. That's the demolition of the route between Ilkley and Addingham, sadly. But there's a reason that picture's up there, which I'll come on to in a minute. So as I covered already, our role is a huge awareness raising role, community representation. We're getting more involved now with the steering committee and the working group. Political engagement, as you've seen, from right all the way up the spectrum, from local councillors through to MPs. And we're also developing our role as volunteers and how we can contribute to the project. We've done a draft Greenway status paper, just reviewing the work on each section of the Greenway and what needs to happen next. It's done by one of our volunteers. And then the reason I was in the pub in Addingham last night was I was at a council meeting in Addingham where they agreed to work with Ilkley Council and ourselves as facilitators, looking at the route options between Ilkley and Addingham, and is there a better option than what was proposed in a sustenance feasibility study in 2017, just to review that. We're also hoping to expand our start some practical volunteering, increasing, improving the surfaces on the Greenway where there are public footpaths. And we're also seeking to get some professional volunteers, perhaps some retired engineers who can help out with some of this work on route options, and helping us review the work that's been done already. So to conclude then, the Wharfdale Greenway is a fantastic project. There is I'm not biased on this. And our survey shows that there is fantastic public support for it. But there are challenges, and I think we would like to work with all stakeholders to help overcome that. And hopefully one day it becomes the gateway to Yorkshire Dales National Park. Thank you. I'll just leave you with.
I think that's a really interesting. It seemed very opportune when Colin got in contact with us about the national park, about what they're doing, and it would, as I said, it would be a great link into the national park, and it's quite an interesting project because it straddles 3 local authorities and ourselves as well. Right, I'm going to see if the technology works now. We've got Sue and Tim from the Peak District National Park Authority.
Hi, Rob.
So
Okay,
we can hear you, yes.
brilliant. Can you see us?
Can you share your screen now? Oh, actually, let me just come out of this. Or,
I can do.
oh, no, not that one. Go on.
Sorry, just bear with us.
I'm not so sure.
Sure. Just bear with us. We'll find the right window for you.
Yeah, we can see that if you
Yep, hopefully this will do it from the beginning for you. Are you seeing that as the presenter view or the full view?
Are you seeing that, Rob?
You
we
seeing
can
that?
see
Okay.
we can see that. Can you just start the slideshow and then
Yeah.
you're good to
Yeah.
go? Thank you. Yeah.
Interview.
Okay, you seeing that as we are?
Yeah, we're seeing, but yeah, we'll see both of you and the presentation. You're good to go.
That's
Thanks.
brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit today about the success of the traffic-free multi-user routes in the Peak District. But if we could just introduce ourselves. I'm Tim Nicholson. I'm the Transport Policy Planner for the Peak District National Park Authority. I've worked for the authority for a little over 25 years now, and that's been with a transport focus for the last 23 years. Sue?
Hi there, I'm Sue Smith, Access and Rights Away Officer. I've got a few more years on you, Tim.
I know.
So 30 years for the Peak District National Park Access and Rights Away for probably about 18 years.
Thanks, Sue. Okay, so we'll just go through a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. So firstly, we'll give you a bit of strategic background on the Peak District National Park, because all national parks are a bit different. I'll talk about the supply of former railways, which we're very lucky to have. I'll talk you through the offer, the benefits, the challenges, and then a little bit on moving forward. So the strategic background, the map there shows the national park boundary and the various local authorities that fall within our area. So we were the first of the UK national parks, designated in April 1951, and we lie at the heart of England. It's a geopolitically complex area, more so than any other UK national park. We've got 11 constituent authorities, 7 highway authorities, 6 transport authorities, 4 mayoral combined authorities now, 2 subnational transport bodies, which kind of meet more or less in the middle of the park. Approximately 13.5 million people live within a 1-hour drive of the boundary of the national park by car. Before COVID, we got approximately 26 million visits per year. Since COVID, and particularly during the easing of lockdown, it was a lot busier than that, we believe. But since COVID, the pattern of visiting has also changed. We're getting lots of new visitors, and some locations have been extremely busy, and the vast majority of our visits are day visits. Around 85% of visits are made by private car or van, and roughly, we believe, 2/3 of those visits are made from within a 20-mile catchment of the national park boundary. So, a captive audience in some ways. So we've got a really good supply of former railways and their structures. Some of the photos there show signal boxes, bridges, platforms, tunnels across the Peak District National Park, and these features make brilliant multi-user routes. They're usually flat. They're wide enough for a mix of users, for walkers, wheelers, cyclists and horse riders. And as you can see from the photos, it's really always sunny in the Peak District National Park.
Tim, we're just still on the first slide here.
You shouldn't be, no. Sorry. We should be on about the first slide from that.
Yeah, that's changed to the second slide. Good supply of form.
Yeah, so you're seeing that, okay, yeah? Yeah, okay. So what I will do now is take you through some of those routes. So you should see one with manifold track on now. Yeah. So this was the former Leek and Manifold Light Railway, which closed in 1934, and in a massive, way ahead of its time approach, the then Staffordshire County Council or equivalent reopened it as a trail in 1937, so way ahead of its time. Staffordshire County Council owned the route. It links Hume End within the national park with water houses on its boundary, where the National Park Authority has got car parks. It's a mix of on and off road route with a fairly challenging tunnel section, which you can see on the photo on the left, which is Swainsley Tunnel, which is open to traffic and attracts Top Gear viewers to rev their engines going through it. The track is 8 miles long and it accesses some amazing places. The photo there of Thor's Cave, which can be accessed directly from the trail. There are approximately 238 movements along that trail, two-way movements in 2015, so an average annual daily total of 238. So the next slide is the High Peak Trail. This is the former Cromford and High Peak Railway, which closed in 1967, one of the beach enclosures. It was an important aggregate railway serving the...
Sorry, Tim.
Sorry, can you see that?
No, I don't know what's going on there. Still on the manifold.
Right. I've got the High Peak one showing here, so I don't know if it's just slow to catch up.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a delay. Preempt the change. Or do you want me to get the slides up here and then you ask me to change it?
It might make it a bit easier. I guess. Sorry. So if you let me know when you've got the High Peak Trail one.
What I'll do is I'll share my screen actually with you.
Yeah.
Just tell me when can you see that?
Just yeah, I can see that. That is great.
Just
thank you.
Tell me when to change slide.
Yeah, will do. Thank you. So it's the former Cromford and High Peak Railway. It was an important aggregate railway serving the Buxton enclave of quarries. And the High Peak Trail opened in 1971. It's jointly owned with Derbyshire County Council, so we have the bit within the national park and they have the bit outside the national park. It runs from Dowlow, which is to the south of Buxton, to Cromford Junction, which is outside the national park, and it's approximately 17 miles. There's some really steep inclines along the route, particularly in the Derbyshire County Council section. And this is because when it was an operational railway, the route down to the valley bottom was too steep for traditional railways. So basically they used engine houses with static engines to haul the wagons up and down the incline. And that's where the emblem for the High Peak Trail comes from, that is shown on the slide there. And we recorded 122 two-way movements at Parsley Hay for this trail in 2010. Next slide, please. So Tissington Trail, this is the Ashbourne branch line of the Cromford High Peak Railway, which again closed in 1967. The trail opened in 1971, and it joins the High Peak Trail just south of Parsley Hay Station. We own the whole route, including a section that's outside of the National Park at Ashbourne. The route runs from Parsley Hay to Ashbourne, which is 13 miles, and we've got a cycle hour and cafe at Ashbourne. There are two steep sections, which it is shown on the photo on the left of the slide. Basically, there's a missing bridge from the route, and so we've taken the route down, but we have to put a chicane in to slow cyclists down and urge them to dismount, because as you can probably gather, people like to get the speed down one side to get up the other side. We've recorded 322 two-way movements on this route at Parsley Hay in 2017. Next slide, please. Just to give you a bit of context, this is how the those three trails kind of interconnect. It's got the High Peak Trail running towards the east from the northwest. It joins the Tissington Trail at Parsley Hay, and then in close proximity we've got the Manifold Track, which is accessible by a mix of footpaths and bridleways, and there's interconnections along between the trails at that section. Next slide, please, Rob. So the Monsell Trail, this is our flagship trail. It's our most popular one. It's the former Manchester, Buxton, Matlock and Midland Junction Railway, but we tend to refer to it as Matlock to Buxton. It's closed in 1968. It wasn't one of the beach enclosures, it was a Barbara Castle one. The Monsell Trail initially opened in 1981, but it was a broken trail. It was severed by 4 closed tunnels which were full of rubbish. Funding from Cycling England in 2010 enabled us to clear those tunnels and create a single multi-user trail. And as a result, the cycle usage increased by 400% from one weekend to the next, with the opening in between. Wholly owned by the National Park Authority, and it runs between Bakewell and a little settlement called Blackwell Mill, which is just to the east of Buxton. We own a cafe at Nillersdale Station, and there are also 2 private cycle hire and cafe stroke tuck shops at Hassop Station and Blackwell Mill. It's got 6 tunnels, several viaducts, so a complicated one for maintenance. And you can see on the slide there, we've got Bakewell Station, which is where our cafe is, and the Monsell Head Viaduct, which is one of the landmarks of the national park. Lots of people like to come and stop and get that view. We recorded 908 two-way movements per day during 2023 at the Hassop Station counter for that particular trail. Next slide, please. The Longdendale Trail, this is part of the Transpennine Trail. It's the former Woodhead Railway, which closed in 1981. It was opened as a trail in 1992, and it's operated by the Transpennine Trail Company. It runs from Hatfield near Glossop to Woodhead Station, so 6.5 miles, and it parallels the A628 trunk road. Beyond Woodhead Station and some tunnels which take the former railway under the hillside, the Transpennine Trail has some very challenging crossings, but we'll talk more about that shortly. Next slide, please, Rob. And finally, of the trails, the Thornhill Trail. It's the route of the former Bamford to Lady Bower Light Railway, which was built to help with the construction of the dams, particularly Lady Bower Reservoir. Transported building materials from the Hope Valley Railway at Bamford up the valley to the reservoir. Thornhill Trail was opened in the 1990s and it's owned by the National Park Authority, and it runs between Thornhill and Ladybower, approximately 2 miles. Next slide, please, Rob. So what is our offer? Why are these trails so popular? Well, mainly traffic free, with the exception of a section of the Manifold and some crossing points on the High Peak Trail. They're linear, they're flattish, they've all got some gradients, and as we've already mentioned, there's some steep inclines on the High Peak Trail, but by and large, they're suitable for all users. They are multi-users, so we get cyclists, walkers, horse riders, unicyclists, you name it, and they're particularly used by people with disabilities using a range of trampers and mobility scooters. We've got lots of car parks that give access to these trails. We've got interpretation and waymarking along them. We provide cycle hire, including trampers, and the photo on the screen there includes the people from Active Travel England who were with us on Monday having a look around and having a go on some of our equipment at Parsley Hay. We have cafes, we have outdoor seating, so cafe at Parsley Hay and outdoor seating as well. We provide toilets. We offer an adventure, so there's a photo there of one of the tunnels on the Monsell Trail, and people really love going into those tunnels. It's surprising. I mean, it's quite a different atmosphere. They're lit inside, but there's still soot on the walls from the former engines that used it. There's wildlife, so on the photos show, we get orchids and all sorts of plants along these routes. We provide equestrian facilities. One of the routes includes the High Peak Bridleway. You can see on there on the slide we've got a mountain ramp and evidence of its use at the side of it. Next slide, please, Rob. What are the benefits? So we did some recreation hub surveys in 2016, and the sites on the trail, they were the main destination for a visit to the national park for more than 70% of the people we spoke to, and more than 70% of them were return visitors. Almost 3/4 of those visits were for recreational purposes, so active recreation. We got a high level of satisfaction with the facilities. The people there were aware that they're in the national park and what national parks were. Bearing in mind this is from 2016, we got relatively high levels of spend as part of that day out. So for the High Peak Trail, the average spend per person who filled the questionnaires in was £51.25, and based on the counts that we've got, that equates to 1.14 million per annum. For the Tissington Trail, it was £51.80, and that equates to £3.04 million per annum. And for the Monsell Trail, it was £52.95. And bearing in mind the large numbers of users, that equates to £8.73 million per annum coming into the economy. People we spoke to were aware of the park's special qualities, and they valued the interconnected routes between them. So the ability to use braided footpaths alongside the trail, so you'd spend a little bit of time on the trail and then you'd visit the river valley at the side of it. Next slide, please, Rob. So what are the challenges to these routes? First of all, maintenance. All of these tunnels, bridges, viaducts and embankments are more than 100 years old, and they cost money to maintain. So the two photos on the slide, one is, it's an amazing structure. It's a limestone embankment on the High Peak Trail near to Minninglow Car Park, but it has to be maintained. The second photo shows some of the protection that we've had to put in and the approaches to the tunnels on the Monsell Trail to protect people from rocks falling from above. So again, all of this stuff needs to be maintained and monitored. There are also campaigns for reopening the railways. There have been long-standing calls to reopen both the Woodhead and Matlock to Buxton railways. And for the latter one campaign has been at it for more than 40 years, and that's the Peak Rail Heritage Railway. They already operate a heritage railway from Matlock to Roseley. They'd like to extend and cover the whole route. And we did give them outline planning permission in 1989. It just never came to pass. And over recent years, it's been the Manchester and East Midlands Rail Action Partnership that have been actively campaigning to reopen what they call the Peaks and Dales line. We safeguard both the corridors for future rail use, while setting really high standards requiring replacement trails of equal or better quality. And our current local plan review consultation is asking if we should safeguard the current use the trail rather than for rail. So one to watch out for. Next slide, please, Rob. Moving forward, so for a number of years, people who know me will have heard me talking about the White Peak Loop. Both the National Park Authority and Derbyshire County Council are keen to create links between the two railheads at Matlock, Cromford and Buxton. So the Derwent Valley line, the Buxton line, via extensions to the trail. So we've already got the Monsell Trail, we've got the High Peak Trail, and we've got the Tissington Trail that comes off it. The missing sections are shown in red, and some of them are fairly challenging to deliver, either in terms of the geography of the places that we need to go to or getting landowner consent to be able to deliver them. But it's something we're very keen to do to create what will be a 50+ mile route, a multi-day route potentially for people to explore the national park. Thanks, Rob. Next slide, please. So Longdale Trail and Transpennine Trail. I mentioned earlier about there being some challenging crossings on the Transpennine Trail. So the top 3 photos all show crossings along there. And there's someone who actually took these photos 5 minutes to cross it a lot of the time. In fact, the one on the right of the slide with the cyclist crossing, the pair of us were stood there for at least 5 minutes looking at each other, waiting to actually get across the road there. The A628 is a trunk road. It carries at least 12,000 vehicles per day, and lots of those are HGVs. And because it's a twisty, turny road, they tend to platoon, so it's difficult to get past them. We'd like to improve the crossing at Woodhead Station, which is the one shown in the centre there. But we're also wondering whether there's a possibility to reroute to avoid the other 2 crossings. But this would involve going across special area of conservation, special protection area and SSSI land. So we need to assess whether this could be done in line with national park purposes, and particularly preventing harm to ground nesting birds. But the 2 photos on the bottom to the right both show where there is an existing use, and that might enable us to be able to reroute the Transpennine Trail that way. Next slide, please, Rob. Finally, on the moving forward, we're working on the Peak District cycling, walking and wheeling infrastructure plan, along with the other English national parks. We've been given money from Active Travel England to do this. So first of all, we've done an awful lot of consultation. We've met with highway authorities in 2 workshops in July and September. We hosted the landowner workshop last week, which went really well. And we've also established a local access forum subgroup, and we met with them for the first time yesterday. And we've been basically asking them to draw on maps and show us the gaps in the network, what is there, what is planned, and what is missing. What we're keen to do, because we have got some highway authorities, is to work with them rather than duplicate anything that they're already doing. We're collecting data and evidence. We've got additional counters installed, some counters that we can move around. So we're trying to get more data, and we've got some surveys planned to interview users of our trails and find out what they get from them, and anything that they would like to see done, what they think of the facilities, etc. We're looking at early scheme development. So amongst the things we're doing with Active Travel England on Monday, we're showing them around some of the places where we think we'd like to do some feasibility work with some of their money. And then finally, we obviously have a plan to write, which we need to get completed by the end of March. Next slide, please, Rob. Okay, that's pretty much it. So thank you very much for listening. We're happy to take questions. I'm not sure how Rob wants to do that, whether it's now or in the more natural break. Happy either way.
I think we'll because you're here on the call, we'll do questions for you now. Got a fancy thing. So, mate, has anyone got any questions for the Peak District National Park? Just one from Elliot. Yeah, from there.
Hi, Tim. It's Elliot here from Yorkshire Dales National Park. I'm interested. Obviously, some of those are quite well established, long established trails. Has there been a change in surfacing that you look at for the different routes as time has gone on?
Yes.
Do you want to pick that one up, Sue?
Yeah, surfacing, we've generally been using Ultitrek. The maintenance side of things that Tim mentioned, Ultitrek provides a really good rolling surface for a range of different users, and using DEFRA access rule funding, we've been widening sections of the trails to allow better access for disabled users, and linking that in with improved facilities and equipment that we're obtaining as well using the DEFRA access rule funding.
Thank you.
I've been cycling these for 35 years, and the surface has changed. The first time we did the manifold trail, it was great big lumps of stone, virtually impassable on a bike. But what I was going to say is, was your council, did they buy up all the railway to start with, or did you have to buy back bits that farmers had bought?
My understanding is that we were offered these routes at a small amount in order to take them on and bring them on as trails. But obviously, for the ones that we acquired in the 70s and 80s, it's before, I think, both of our time with the organisation.
So that's where we differ, I suppose. And the reason I'll come to the reason we've asked the Petes to talk today is because it's a great example of what's achieved in their national park, and we're kind of, there are railways and this will build into the next talks near the end, and opportunities within the Yorkshire Dales National Park of developing these routes. So I have a question about kind of. You hear that?
Sorry, Rob, we didn't get that.
Yeah.
Could you?
Are you aware of an increase in the use of e-bikes and a conflict with other users with e-bikes on these routes?
We certainly see more e-bikes on the routes. I'm not sure there's necessarily a particular conflict on those routes. They are multi-user. They are fairly wide. I am aware of conflict elsewhere on particularly where there are e-mountain bikes, and sometimes they're on footpaths rather than bridleways, etc. But it's not something that I've heard anything about on our trail network. I don't know about you, Sue.
No, I was just going to add that we have cycle hire on the trails at Parsley Hay, and we do hire out quite a lot of e-bikes. So there's tremendous interest in hiring e-bikes and opening up cycling and access to a greater range of users. But we're not receiving reports back via cycle hire of conflict.
I'll just take two more and then we'll just have to move on.
Hi, Colin McCann, Friends of Wharfdale Greenway. I'm interested in your landowner workshop, how that worked, and did you get the positive response you wanted from that, and how you managed that?
It went, I have to say, it went really well. We invited a range of, so within the Peak District, we've got 3 different utilities companies that own land. We've got National Trust, which own a lot of land, and we've got some private landowners as well, some very large private landowners. So Chatsworth Estate falls within the National Park. We've got Haddon Estates as well, and Tissington Village, which is also owned an owned estate. And we actually got representatives from all of them there. To be honest, the hardest bit of the whole day was actually getting people to stop and eat lunch and then ushering them out the door at the time where we kind of actually had enough for the day. They were really good, and the feedback that we got from them was great. I mean, our approach was to invite, and I've got to be honest, I was kind of wary of sending a direct invitation to Lord Edward Manners and to Sir Richard Fitzherbert. So I approached our CEO's PA to see the best way of doing it, and they actually all asked for a direct invitation, and they did attend, and we're actually really good in the workshops. Yeah, but there are some places where we'd like to do things that may be on their land, and we're probably struggling to get permission to do that. But overall, their input was great for the day. I don't know if you want to add anything, Sue.
Yeah, I think this is the way that the workshop was run, in terms of the fact that they were marking on a map. So instead of commenting, so they were seeing what other people had provided, but also had the opportunity to identify their own routes. And I've actually got a number of follow-up meetings with them, particularly to talk about the miles without style. So looking at the accessibility of their estates and land holdings.
So sorry, was the purpose of the workshop to just manage existing access or secure new access, or both?
We were looking for, so what we've done with the highway authorities, the landowners and the LAF, Local Access Forum subgroup, is actually asked them to provide us with information on things that already exist that we might not know about, particularly the LC WIP authorities, to see whether they have anything that they're bringing forward that we might not know about, but then particularly asking people to look for the gaps and to tell us where they'd like to see a strategic network and the layer beneath it, the linking network. So it's literally been, yeah. Again, one of the hard things has been getting to persuade people to actually draw on maps, because there's a subversion to do it. Yeah, until one of us actually goes and gets a marker pen and draws a line over it, they're very averse to that. But it's literally been that mapping exercise of which we are then able to kind of ask them to give us priorities on as well. Yeah, so a number of routes identified or gaps, and then we're asking highway authorities and the landowners, say, right, where would you like to see delivered? What will make the biggest difference? What is easiest to do? So yeah, it's left us with a lot of stuff to interpret, to be quite honest, but it's been a very rewarding process as well.
Just one final question over there for you both.
Stephen Morton, the Town Councillor at Skipton. I want to ask, it showed some very healthy figures of expenditure linked to these trails. I wasn't sure if that was daily expenditure for individuals, but if it was, so they're quite high levels, and I wondered if you know how it breaks down, how much was spent on cafes and refreshments, how much on car parks, and how much on purchases.
Yep. So the surveys that we did, let's say they're from 2016. It was to inform some work on the recreation supplementary planning document, and we split the spend into local shops, food and drink at cafes, etc., cycle hire, accommodation if it was needed. But if they were staying visits, we asked for the day rate of their accommodation. And I think the thing that surprised me was that for all of the trails, they're within a pound or so of each other. So we expected it to be high on the Monsell Trail. We didn't expect it to be quite so high elsewhere. Let's say that they are 2016 rates. We did some similar work looking at the trails back in 2013 as part of the management plan for them, and again we were getting quite high levels of spend as part of that all day out. So yeah, when we were doing these surveys, we're also looking at locations where people spend £2. Yeah, the parking's free, but they weren't on our trail network, and they were largely people who were popping in to their local area for dog walking, etc. But we have some confidence in the figures, in that they're accurate from the representation, from the people who filled the questionnaires in. What I would say is it's a fairly small sample because they're qualitative surveys rather than quantitative. But the surveys that we're about to carry out will ask that question again. So again, we're very keen to be able to take robust evidence to Active Travel England and others saying, if you can provide us some funding to deliver some of these projects, this is the benefit that it can bring to the local economy.
Yeah. So it's a good point there. There's a lot of research saying that cyclists spend more for an economic business case, out there at Active Travel England advocate that a lot. Tim and Sue, you're very welcome to stay on if you want. Just one more talk before the break.
Yeah, we'll sit through the talk. Thank you.
I'll hand over to Emma Moody from the Lake District. That's the plan.
the shift just before the break, the one no one wants to do. So I will try and be quick. Are we running a bit behind time? So yeah, I will try and rattle through these, but I will be around at break and lunchtime if anyone wants to pick up on any further questions with me. So as Rob said, I'm Emma Moody. I work for the Lake District National Park in a similar role to Rob's. I think you probably mostly know the Lake District. It's just across the M6 if you're wondering. And I'm going to mainly talk about the Keswick to Torquil Trail and a case study there and go into a bit more details there. But I'll just very briefly talk about the parallel work that we're doing to the work that all the other national parks are doing with Active Travel England. We have similarly been over the summer going out to public consultation, asking people to drop pins on maps showing where they'd like to see improvements. That's a very zoomed in version of our map, which, as you can see, has over 250 suggestions on there. So our next stage is to go through those, prioritise those, and also arrange sort of mapping stakeholder meetings with people like our local authorities, National Trust, and other key stakeholders, which will come to a consultation draft of the network plan, which we'll then go forward with. So you'll see they're all over the Lake District, and some people even have added a couple in the Yorkshire Dales just to keep you happy. So I will be passing those details on to Rob, so you can consider those as part of your plan. But yeah, so the case study I've asked to talk about is the Keswick to Torquil Trail, which is in the north of the Lake District National Park, on an old railway line. So many parallels with the Peak District routes that we've just heard about. And it currently runs about 5 kilometres, and it's had a sort of mixed history. The railway closed in 1972. So a fairly recent closure, and the National Park bought up this section of it. It's a real shame they didn't buy all of it, but there we go. But I wasn't obviously working for them at that time. So yes, but this section was developed as a trail for walking and then cycling. It was popular. We estimate that around 110,000 people per annum were using it. But then Storm Desmond came along in December 2015. A lot of you will probably remember Storm Desmond. It created all sorts of destruction all over the north of England. And we woke up that morning to find that 2 of our major bridges on the trail were completely destroyed. Huge section of path was washed out. A boardwalk section that was going around a cliff had been undermined to a point where it wasn't safe. Massive destruction, obviously, alongside all the other destruction. And, you know, not only was that challenging for us in terms of all the other paths we had to deal with, as well as this one, but also some of our rangers had themselves been flooded, so weren't able to be working with us. So very challenging time. But one thing became evident almost immediately was that there was a strong demand for us to reopen it. Question was how. You know, the scale of what had happened was enormous. But we looked into what could be done, not just to reopen it as it was, but to reopen it to a greater level of resilience for future floods and also a greater level of accessibility. Various options were created at a cost of £7.9 million, which is quite a substantial amount of money. I don't need to tell you that. By far the biggest project we'd ever carried out as a national park. So we needed to work with engineering consultants. You know, we're used to putting wooden bridges across relatively small rivers. These were substantial bridges. So we then went to the public with those options, did a consultation. And so partly because it's such a well-loved area, such a well-loved path already, there were some very strong views. Yes, very strong support in it reopening, but it was the how that was quite challenging, particularly around the surfacing. As you'll see, the bulk of our funding came from National Highways, and their specification is for sealed surface. So that was what we specified. That in the initial consultation, it was okay. Yes, some people objected, but then it seemed to gain some traction. And it resulted even in us getting the front page of the Sun, and it all being conflated with the sort of whole culture wars areas. So not something I would wish on anyone really, to be honest, but we carried on because we believed it was the right thing to do, particularly because accessibility and inclusivity is so important for us. And we started construction. So yes, so this is a tunnel that we needed to excavate, quite a significant job. It had been backfilled with all sorts of rubble. This is where the route before went around the outside, which not only had become unstable, but it also wasn't particularly accessible. It had quite a steep slope on it. So that was one of our major projects, obviously bridges as well. New path where it had completely been washed away. Yeah, 2 new bridges, big bridges, and 5 kilometres of trail. So that construction took 18 months. And so in the sort of complete, the fundraising, the consultation and the construction took pretty much exactly 5 years. So we reopened the trail 5 years after Storm Desmond in December 2020. And here are just a few photos showing a sort of finished trail. So I like this one because although it shows the tunnel, which is lovely, and some people going through it, if you look closely at the little girl in the middle, she's kind of going, wee! And that kind of sums up the kind of, you know, pleasure that people can get from cycling, from experiencing a tunnel. You know, it's bringing that joy back into people's lives. Yeah, it's fully accessible. That's one of the new bridges. And yeah, I'll do these quickly. Oh, sorry. So that's a repaired bridge. And so alongside that, it's not just about the trail. There's lots of things that give it the added value and experience, enable more people to enjoy it. So information, interpretation and marketing is very important. The first picture there shows that we use the sort of share with care message around every user sort of caring for each other. You know, we're all responsible for being considerate to other people, and that's very much the message we try to promote. It is a busy track, so you know everyone needs to think about other users. Information about the history there, but also it's part of the National Cycle Network, so signage for that according to the Sustrans brand. And of course the bike underneath has an advert for a local cafe on it. So, you know, you try and have it all, you know, your branding, but at the end of the day, there are other people using it, there are other uses of it, and, you know, that's fine. So one thing that I would have liked to have thought about a bit more at the outset, I think you'll probably seen from those dates that a lot of the construction was during COVID, so there was an awful lot of other things going on in terms of visitors not being around for a lot of the construction time. But that's not an excuse. I wish we'd put more attention into thinking about the toilets, parking, the public transport links, and how those connected up to it, and how we could mitigate any future issues. I mean, we couldn't have totally done that, but one lesson learned is that any project like this, we kind of look into the more holistic approach. That shows some of the sort of fly parking at the Threlkeld end of it, and you'll see in the bottom left that someone has very helpfully dropped a Google pin on the A66 on the main road at that end of it, so showing that's where the path ends. So people navigate to that point and then go, oh, where can I put my car? Oh, well, I'll just dump it on this verge. So, those are things that it's quite hard through your own comms because people find out so much now through Google and social media. But you need to try and nip that sort of information in the bud and try and get the positive information about that as to where, safe places are to park, or even better, there is a half-hourly bus service that goes from one end to the other. Why not use that instead? So like Tim with the Trails in the Peak District, big benefits to local businesses, whether that be cafes, pubs, bike hire, accommodation. And here's interesting to compare those figures with Tim's. So the users per year is 265,000, which Tim was using daily two-way traffic. So that equates to, ours is about 910, which is similar to his figure for the Monsell Trail, their busiest trail. 15 million per year economic benefit estimated. Davies says 15.45 a day. Staying visitors a lot more, obviously. And this was from on surveys on the route. So I'm very happy to share those in more detail because, you know, they've been really useful in making the case, not just about this particular trail, but for other trails that people might be wanting to develop in future. And you probably heard me say earlier, it was 110,000 before we did this work. So there's been a huge uplift as a result of the improvements that we've made. Also carbon savings. We've talked a bit about leisure versus commuting utility travel. So while leisure is greater, you know, there still is a really significant saving for commuting and leisure travel. So even though it's a rural area, people are still going to work, people are still going to school. I know my own children travel to school on this, and lots of other people do. So, you know, it's not something, they're both important, I think. Health and well-being, really important, really good feedback on how this using the trail has affected people's physical and mental health. And not a lot of casual use, but also events such as the park run that use the trail every week, which attracts between 200 and 500 runners per week. So, you know, that's a really positive. Plus it's used by sort of more extreme events as part of that route and as a way of avoiding the A66. So yeah, so a lot of things going on. So what next? We are working on developing a new link that continues onwards to Falkeld Quarry. It connects to another settlement. It connects to a quarry and mining museum. It connects up a missing link in the National Cycle Network. Route 6 sort of can't cross the A66, so it gets people underneath that busy road. And we've just completed the public consultation, which shows 75% strongly in favour, another 12% yes, but a few other things they'd like to change. So that we hope to complete within the next couple of years. So that's it for now. But I'm very happy to take questions, or if you just want to get your refreshments, I'll appreciate that as well.
So that's the end.
Yeah.
Just going to go
Yeah.
a bit behind. So we'll just go for about a 15-minute break. We're back around 12:05, like that. And we'll reconvene then. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Hope the rest of the day goes well.
Finally, get you back up here, Tim. Where are you? Again, if you can hear me, Tim, you're welcome to stay on. I'll just leave the meeting open. Yeah. Yeah, no, doing right. Doing well. Thanks. I'll just stop the recording now. I think.